I think a lot of people just don't know that much about it. So they've heard of it. It's like magic internet money. They don't quite understand it. And I think a lot of people don't know that much of history about money. You just realize what is money. And once you step back and ask that, it's basically whatever people agree it is. And it changes throughout history. So why would it not keep evolving?
Hey everybody, today I'm joined with Bitcoin Hoodie Guy on the Orange Pill Club podcast. He's a YouTuber and an influencer in this space that has a lot of amazing content. One of the videos that he's put out, which is really amazing, is he actually goes up to people and asks them what's the total supply of Bitcoin. I first found this video and I thought, wow, this is really cool. So Bitcoin Hoodie Guy, how are you today?
Oh, good. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, James. It's always fun to talk about Bitcoin because sometimes there's not enough people to talk to Bitcoin about.
Very true. That's very true. So Bitcoin Hoodie Guy, I mean, how did you get into Bitcoin? Like, what was the story behind it? It's really rare to
Um,
meet people who get into
Yeah,
this.
it was 2017 when the summer, kind of June or July of 2017, when Bitcoin was about 2,300, and we were just sold a house and moving into a new house. So I didn't have much money, but I bought Bitcoin then, and then I sold it off when it got up to about 15, when it went up to 19, then back down to 15,000. And so that was my first foray into it. And I kept paying attention and played around with it a little bit. And then I was like 2020, the halving, I was like, and then, COVID and it was down. But then I had a friend that was really into finance. It was like, oh, when guys like you start asking about Bitcoin, that's when, and I was like, so I got kind of scared off. And then I didn't really get back into crypto until early 2021 when Wall Street Bets wanted to make Doge to a dollar, and Doge was like a penny and a half. So I was like, whoa, whoa, they just did this with GameStop. I'm gonna jump in, and then I was messing around with Doge, and then eventually circled back and back to Bitcoin, and then and then I was doing all sorts of degen stuff with NFTs and all sorts of other cryptos during the bull market and bear markets. Kind of like, oh, I'm learning more, and realized that yeah, there's going to be short term. I think there's going to be some things that can outperform Bitcoin, but it's like a needle in a haystack. And then when you look at what Bitcoin is with its security, the fixed supply, basically that it's been around, it's the most secure computer network in the world. I mean, I think it's doing like what, over 400 quintillion calculations a second, and like no one controls it, and you can see that the money printer's going off like crazy, and they're gonna have to turn that baby back on, and so it's like it basically feels like it's a savings account, and so I know it's like what you guys are doing, where people can get a little bit, might not be, a little bit now might be a lot later.
Definitely. I mean, hopefully one Satoshi hits a dollar. I mean, I think that's when Bitcoin would be $1 million, I think. But yeah, it'd be
Oh
really
yeah.
crazy to see that.
And I think when you're online too, a lot, we get in these echo chambers, and you're like, you got your little crypto Twitter or your YouTube videos you watch, and you kind of think everyone knows about Bitcoin. And then you realize that a lot of people have heard about it, but most people don't know that much about it. And it's just something that doesn't make very much sense to them. And, really, it's got what's backing it is the most powerful computer network ever that no one group or entity controls. And that's pretty powerful, where most of the fiat currencies is backed by armies and an economy, really.
What are your thoughts about Bitcoin? And it sort of represents a current threat to central banking right now. What are your thoughts of Bitcoin right now in America? Do you feel like people are quite receptive to the concept of Bitcoin, or do you feel like a lot of people are still kind of like, I'm gonna probably look at this from afar. You got this FTX trial going on; it's kind of scary. What are your thoughts, like how people think right now on this topic?
I think a lot of people just don't know that much about it. So they've heard of it. It's like magic internet money. They don't quite understand it. And I think a lot of people don't know that much of history about money. And it's not like I'm an expert, but I've started to listen to more books about money, like the Bitcoin Standard, but some other history of money books. And you just realize what is money. And once you step back and ask that, it's basically whatever people agree it is. And it changes throughout history. So why would it not keep evolving? And I think a lot of people, they just get misconceptions and they don't know that much about it. and it takes time. I mean, I don't know. I've got hundreds of hours of watching YouTube videos and this, and it's also good to get counterpoints, because no one truly knows what the future's what's going to happen. But I think a lot of people just have misconceptions, and I think it's people all over the spectrum, and I do think that maybe a few more liberal people tend to see the negative parts that are amped up because their little echo chamber on the internet is talking about the negative aspects of like the environmental aspect, or the like it's funding terrorism and all that stuff. So that's kind of like they already instantly write it off. They don't go any deeper because it's like, why would I go any deeper? And so that's why there's this one book I've been listening to called, I can't remember the title. It's like Bitcoin for Progressives. So the guy's a liberal guy and he's tackling all those points. And that's a good book if you have someone that you think might be on the fence, that you can give it to them, because some of this is like, for me, I have a small channel, a couple thousand subscribers. Like, I'm not going to pump Bitcoin. There's nothing I'm going to do that pumps Bitcoin. I can help get the word out, spread the word, but like, people aren't going to watch my video and all of a sudden Bitcoin 10x's, so it's not going to dump down or nothing like that. And so, like, getting your family to buy Bitcoin, you're not really profiting, or your friends, but you feel like, basically I see Bitcoin as a savings account, for a long-term savings account, where it's, probably the best place to park your money, because it's the buying power. Like, I made a video a couple of days ago, like, basically a house might be $350,000 right now. So what's that, like 10 Bitcoin? And then the house is probably going to be 700,000 to a million in 10 years, but it's probably going to be like half a Bitcoin. I don't know, maybe even be a tenth of a Bitcoin. I don't know, but it's not going to be 9 or 10 Bitcoin. So in Bitcoin, everything gets cheaper. In fiat, everything's going to get more expensive, and it's just mathematics, because they're printing more money. And I don't know. What do you think about that?
No, it's to your credit, you put out a lot of great educational information. I do
Thank
believe
you.
Bitcoin fills this void of central banking. There's been so many issues with us having to print money. We're about to fund, I think, what seems to be our second conflict that's going to be coming up. We're not directly participating, but nonetheless, you have a younger generation who has to come in here and say, "Hey, look, we have to pay for taxes, and our taxes go to support all the decisions our country has made, good and bad." And I think it becomes really problematic because as we print more money, the people who have to end up paying for this is the younger generation. And you have a younger generation, Gen Z, millennials, that feel very disenfranchised at the current moment of like, I can't even buy a house. It's not affordable. I can't even buy food. This shit's even more expensive than it was before. Gas right now, it's like $6. Just to give you an idea, I was actually in LA to meet up with some friends. I had an omelet at my hotel. It's like $28. A cup of coffee was like $8.
Oh, wow.
It's bill's supposed to be like 35, 36 plus tax, right? It came out to be $65. And I was just flabbergasted. Like, I could pay for it, but the problem is, like, this is not a $65 omelet. So I asked the waiter, like, what's going on here? It's like, there's taxes, there's surcharges, there's government mandates, there's county mandates, and health insurance needs to also be paid for. I was like, man, this is just kind of getting ridiculous, like how everything is right now. But when I look at Bitcoin, it's just like, you have something here it's so perfect. It's peer-to-peer currency. It can grow in value. It's deflationary by design. There isn't one party that controls the development of Bitcoin. It's open source. That's why I love it. But, going back to your credit earlier, you said that a lot of people have these misconceptions about Bitcoin. And I know you've been educating a lot of people out in the community and, a lot of what I call people who aren't well versed in Bitcoin. But what are some of the challenges you come across when having to talk about Bitcoin with people, and how do you sort of explain that?
I guess part of it is trying to make sure that I know more about Bitcoin, and there's still a lot more I could learn. And so you need to know what that person kind of needs to hear. So if you're talking to someone that, say, is really against a large government, and there's gonna be something different to convince them, versus if it's someone that's really hung up on it's bad for the environment. I don't know, it's all computers, but what's running Netflix? I mean, if you look at a Bitcoin mining operation, there are some differences, but in some ways it doesn't look that much different from a data center that Microsoft, Google, or Amazon has. It's a big warehouse full of computers that are trying to keep the cool because of the fans. Now, I don't know if those other guys are doing the immersion, like a lot of the Bitcoin miners are starting to get into, but you gotta, I guess, one, you start off, I think asking people how many Bitcoin there are is a good one, because once they find out that there's only 21 million, like my friend was like, wow, that's like what really made him think about, like, whoa, okay, there's something here. And then realize that inflation is not going to stop, and that we live in a stable country in the United States. And if you're in Argentina, you have a whole different perspective. So my dad's cousin, we were just down in California and had a family get together, and his brother spends a lot of time down in Argentina. I think he lives mostly down there. Their money is losing value so quickly that what he does is he just has Bitcoin, and then he'll go to one of those money exchange places, and he'll just trade a little bit of Bitcoin for the currency that he's going to use at that moment. Because if you hold that currency, it just the next day or 5 hours later, or a couple of days later, it can lose its value so quickly. So he's using Bitcoin as that hedge to make it so that he's not losing his value, but then just switch it to fiat so he can buy something. And so I guess going back to the challenge is, I think you got to realize who you're talking to. Not everyone, the same argument is going to work for the same for them. So if someone's more liberal and they're against the environment, you can actually, I think that Bitcoin's over 50% renewable energy. So if you look at a lot of these big companies, they're like 12% renewable. So Bitcoin's actually kind of could be a gold standard for them. And plus, what's it worth? I mean, we should have the right to have our own money in our own account that no one can take, that you can send to anyone in the world anytime you want. So, I mean, should be like a basic right.
I totally agree with you right there. It's kind of crazy. I mean, you saw in Canada with the truckers, you
Oh,
saw
yeah.
that, the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau wanted to basically cancel or, block the banking accounts of some of these truckers. And despite, people having a difference in political reasons, I think that's pretty crazy. Money is the ultimate expression of speech. And if you're not able to express yourself, then I think that's just kind of, that's just crazy to me.
And
You
I
actually
think,
had a real,
oh,
go
sorry.
ahead.
You can go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say you had a really interesting story about Argentina, and I just wanted to tell you an interesting story that I had. I was actually in Vancouver. This is about a few months back. I walked into this barber shop. It's called Bitcoin Barber or Crypto Barber. I can't remember at the time. And this guy, he starts telling me his life story. He's from Afghanistan. So he had to immigrate from Afghanistan to America, then to British Columbia because of the war. And it's a little bit unfortunate, but he decided to set up a haircut practice in Vancouver. So he starts telling me that he has to send money home sometimes to his family. And unfortunately, because he's of Afghani heritage, he keeps getting flagged with, the traditional banking system. He's not able to send money back home to support his family. So at the end of my haircut, he's like, hey, got a question. Can you pay me in Bitcoin? It's like, sure. You're the first person to ever ask me this, but I'm
Yeah.
more than happy to do that. So as I left this barbershop, I started to reflect. I was like, this is a pretty interesting story, but there's no way for me to verify this. I don't know any other people who live in Afghanistan. A few months later, I go to a music festival. My Uber driver, he's from Afghanistan. And I tell him this exact same story. And I shit you not, he pulls up his wallet on his phone and says, hey, I was wondering, instead of you paying me through Uber or Lyft, could you pay me through Bitcoin? And I was like, wow, it's crazy just to see, like, internationally, there is something here with Bitcoin, but it's just very, very difficult to quantify. And I
And I
think
think it's
here
more
in,
difficult for people in the United States because, like parents' generation, everything's been stable since World War II. And so everything is just so stable that, they just, okay, there's inflation, but it's not that big a deal. But like you said, Afghanistan and, my wife's from Russia and stuff. So, there's all those sanctions there. And,
I don't agree with Russia being cut off from the SWIFT financial system because you have everyday people who rely on the banking system. They've worked hard to get that money, and all of a sudden you're telling everyday people who really don't even immerse themselves in the politics all of a sudden that they can't transact with Western countries or do business. Like that's really outrageous for me.
and I
Everyday
guess
people
it
getting
could
hurt
have
by that.
weaponized the dollar, which might accelerate the demise of the dollar. I don't think the dollar is going away anytime soon. When you look at the other options, the Chinese dollar, the RMB, or the euro, you know, they're nothing's really primed to take over from the dollar, and it actually is very difficult on your economy to be the world reserve currency. it's a tough thing to pull off. So that probably not going to change anytime soon. But they weaponized Swift, and so now why would a country want to use Swift when the United States can just just turn the switch off?
Totally agreed with you there. So, just changing topics here, when I was growing up, I didn't really learn financial literacy. I wasn't really taught how money works, how to pay for bills, that sort of stuff. And I'm kind of curious. Maybe it was just a state thing or city thing for me. But did you grow up learning financial literacy and how to sort of like take care of your
No,
personal finance?
I think that's a big gap, and I think that I think in the schools, and I think some of it started because like retirement villages now, like Arizona and Florida retirement villages. Well, in 1890, people weren't really trying to worry about retirement. So like, and people that are in the early 1900s were like the first generation that felt like we're really starting to think about retirement. So then, did they teach their kids? My grandpa was an accountant, and he even went to Harvard Business School, and he didn't really teach, my dad and their siblings about financial literacy. And so I don't think that, I mean, I definitely didn't get that. And I think that's something that should, and probably kids now maybe get it a little bit more because a teenager, there's just more online now but I just think that that's a huge gap with people learning how money works, how to save it. And, about Bitcoin, I mean, right now there should be classes on Bitcoin in high school.
Totally agree with you. It's kind of crazy to me that, we don't teach financial literacy in school. A lot of people come out of school and they just don't understand how debt works. They don't understand how, investing into your own self and your own future, how it works. And I think that's the sad part of it. You're basically creating a new generation of even more disenfranchised people that are going to feel very negatively towards fiat money or, central banking.
And I think there's like some kind of, it's like faux pas, like money is evil or something. And it's really just a tool that's good or bad. I don't know, but it's just how we exchange our time, how we get paid. But a large portion of our life is going after money. And so, like Casey Neistat's a guy that had a good video once that talked about money is like, yeah, it's not going to help you fall in love, but anything in your life that's related to money is solved by money. So we should be learning more about how to save and invest. Really, it's hard to save your way to really financial security. It's better to be frugal and save than to not. And then it's tough to have enough earning power, to be a plastic surgeon and just make enough money where you can retire in 2 years. The average person, you need to kind of think about investing. So, that's basically how you do it. But yeah, I agree with you. There's not enough education at an early age. And hopefully that changes.
Been in the healthcare sector for quite some time, and a lot of doctors I talk to, their sort of mindset is like, well, I could just work more and, I'll be able to make the money. And to their credit, yeah, I mean, doctors, they do make a fair amount of money for the amount of schooling that they have to go through and the amount of work and risk they have to take on. But it's just kind of interesting to me because a lot of doctors who I really find super smart, when I start talking about real estate or even stocks, equities, or even crypto or Bitcoin, it's just like, oh, I don't even handle that or touch that at all. So they haven't really thought about this. So it's very interesting, to meet people from all sorts of walks of life who are really into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency.
And
So
then too, some of those doctors, you reach a point where everyone reaches a point in their age where their earning power goes down. So I mean, the doctor's going to be 75 or something, and maybe he's good and healthy, but at some point you can reach where your earning power decreases, and you think like some of those guys that are in the NBA, they're like 19 or 20 and they're making good money for a couple of years, but they're out of the league in 4 or 5 years, and they kind of felt like they're going to be making good money forever, and it wasn't the case. So
yeah, I think statistically, a lot of athletes, they become broke or have to file bankruptcy, sometime in their life. Like it's a very high percentage.
and so
So
those guys need huge amount because basically they should have a golden ticket where they never have to work unless it's something they're passionate about. Um, but it's hard probably because like Steph Curry has been making such good money for so many years that if you see that, it's like, oh, I want to try to be like that. You don't, and even if you're making 1 million a year, you can't live up to what Steph has been making. So
there's no
it,
way unless you become a pro basketball player.
no,
Yeah. So, just out of curiosity, what are sort of the trends or new developments you're seeing in Bitcoin? Is there anything kind of interesting, or even crypto, the Web3 industry? Is there any projects that you've been sort of following, saying, "Hey, this is pretty cool," or "There's something innovative here that's different"?
Mostly just Bitcoin, and then Kaspa is a proof of work that's smaller. I mean, it's got $1 billion market cap, so it's not real small, but they have Ghost Ag, and they got a guy that seems like he's pretty smart. And I'm not sure I'm smart enough to completely know everything about the technology because a lot of projects claim to solve the trilemma. But I think that that's something that might do good in the next bull run, and I don't know. But overall, I'm trying to get just get more Bitcoin as my overall main arching goal. And I know I did get some Bitcoin punks, which is ordinals. And so I think ordinals is an exciting space because it's data that's kept on the most secure computer network. And so I got into Bitcoin punks because it's the first 10,000 collection, but there's going to be more use cases. And I think Lightning Network is starting to fire up. And so, I was trying to get it to where I can try to use Lightning Network to, if I wanted someone to buy a hoodie, but I haven't got that much into it. And I'm not like a real good salesman, but I thought it'd be cool to try to get to where I could accept Bitcoin for a hoodie. I guess you can see this one right here.
That's awesome. I love it.
But
I love it.
so I think the ordinals, because basically it's information that's stored on the most secure computer network. Oh, I don't know if you've read. I downloaded it and printed it off. Just a sec. I printed off all the Softwar by Jason P Lowery. So because you can't buy it anymore, and so I don't know if you've read it. Now it's like 400 pages, so it's a lot to read, and it's like, it's like
I actually have that book. I actually
Okay.
bought it right when it first came out, and I remember, Amazon had to stop selling it, and I saw on eBay it was going for like I think 30 or 40,000 a copy. I was like, this is crazy. I gave my copy actually to my friend, and that's how he
Okay.
got back into Bitcoin. So he was like, oh, this is actually a pretty fascinating concept about how Bitcoin could essentially be the next. I don't want to say war industry, but the next sort of industry where people will attack or have some sort of competition
Well, it
in.
makes sense, like, because how many junk emails do you get every day? What's the cost? There's no cost. There's no cost for someone to send 100. I mean, or the cost is so minimal. You can, for 100 or $200, you can buy a computer. If you have time and if you're coding, you could probably write some code and just mass email people and scam them. Well, what if they had to pay for every email? They had to put $5 of Bitcoin on collateral. How many spam emails would you get? Not very many. You'd probably still get a couple, but it'd be someone that it was, so I think that's part of what Jason was talking about is that you can't use theory to protect cyberspace, that you need something very secure. And if there's this thing that no one really controls, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to believe the Pentagon's not mining or buying Bitcoin right now. I mean, and the fact is, it feels like Jason, because they pay those guys to go to college on different levels. He wrote that, and I think he published it, and I don't think his people above him were. This is just my theory: is that the people above him weren't giving him the attention that he thought, and then that's when he started going more public with it, and then they're like, "Whoa, hey, there might be something here," and now let's make him stop talking about this. Now that maybe at least got their attention, so they don't want that idea getting stronger, but it also like they're okay. So they're spending $900 billion a year. I mean, they could be buying a billion or two of Bitcoin or setting up a mining operation that for a billion or 2 billion that was like compared to all the other money they're spending, because that is a place that needs to be secure. You need so that's where you just feel like if everything's built on the Bitcoin network and it's expensive for someone to attack you, because that's his whole thesis is that like if you see a guy with a gun, that, hey, if I try to attack that guy, that he might shoot me with a gun. So you're like, I'm probably not going to try to attack that guy. The United States protects everything with a large military. So I don't know, to me, that makes a lot of sense what he said. And the fact that they made him stop talking about it makes me feel even stronger about it. I don't know. How about you?
No, I think there's something there. It's very suspicious to me that I would say he got canned for sure. They won't let him talk about it. The only conclusion I can come up with is there's something here that he's talking about, and the government or whoever it is doesn't want this information to be disseminated to possibly other countries that may have, adverse reaction against the United States of America. But that's, the same. I came to the same conclusion as you.
Yeah, so when you think that, it's hard because that's what I think about and like so there's like 3,000 counties, and obviously down there in the Bay Area, where you live or whatever, there's pretty rich counties, but um so and then there's what 19,000 cities and towns. So what happens when their states? I mean, how much Bitcoin could California have on its state budget? And not even really just to put it on there. I mean, the city of Fort Worth was mining it. You had the North Vancouver in Canada that was trying to use Bitcoin mining to generate heat in the winter. So when you look at all these government agencies that can put it on and all these businesses, you look at the fact that there's 62 million millionaires in the world, and it's just like there's not enough Bitcoin to go around. And what happens when even little small towns, and counties with 100,000 people, I mean, they still have multi-million dollar budgets. I mean, and then I guess somewhere if it's on the Lightning Network or something like that, then, but, and the fact that it's different with gold, because people are talking about the gold ETF and what's going to happen with the Bitcoin ETF. And one thing about that is the difference about the gold ETF is that that guy, how you paid the guy in Bitcoin or whatever, but like the average person, the gold ETF doesn't. So the average person can't buy gold. I mean, they technically could, but like say someone in Argentina, how hard is it to buy gold? And just to buy $50 of gold is probably hard. And is someone in Argentina going to be able to buy the gold ETF? So what's different about the Bitcoin ETF is that pretty much almost anyone around the world can buy Bitcoin and put it in their own wallet. So that's what's different is that not everyone can just buy that. There's 8 billion people that could buy Bitcoin and put it in their own wallet and it's out of circulation, where you can't do that with gold. I mean, you can't just be like, well, I'm just going to put $10 into gold today and then make sure that I have the gold myself. No, you might be able to buy some paper gold for $10 or something. But no, with Bitcoin, like right now, anyone basically can get set up, and then within a half an hour, that Bitcoin's in their own wallet and it's no longer in circulation. So I think that's something that's different about Bitcoin ETF versus gold ETF, is that gold is not something that the average person can buy, and you can't buy in small amounts. And you can't, if you do buy paper, then you don't truly own it. And I know some people are trying to tokenize real world stuff, and like LCX is doing time-ins where they're doing diamonds, but like, why would I want to buy a diamond and have LCX hold it? I mean, that makes no sense. I mean,
Yeah. The whole point of Bitcoin was to hold custody of your own things. You don't have to rely on a custodian
oh
who,
yeah.
runs into. There's human nature that always comes into play, and you really don't know how human nature is going to react. You saw in 2008, we had the mortgage-backed security crisis, and the courts had to figure out this huge rehypothecation situation of like who owned what asset, and that's really why Bitcoin was established. It's like, look, people should hold custody of their own things as much as possible. There's liberty rights that go along with that. There's significant property rights that are addressed. And you don't really see that with any other asset class here in the world that at least I can tell.
Well, and like
Real estate, yeah,
well, when
property
you're talking about
taxes.
like real estate here, like is pretty stable because we have a safe country. But like Afghanistan, you're talking about that guy. So if you're living somewhere in Afghanistan and then there's war broke out and you had to leave, like when you come back, that's not your house anymore. Maybe if it's still there, maybe someone else is living there. They don't have those property rights. So in some sense, Bitcoin is actually maybe one of the first true form of ownership that someone can have, and it's actually kind of one of the most beautiful things that ever was created in some level. You know,
There was I want to say with genocide in Eastern Europe. I don't know the country. I think it was Bosnia, but there were a couple employees I hired that immigrated over from the war, and they actually used to own a lot of land there. One of them was a successful fruit vendor, and the other was an attorney. They both fled, and when the war was finally settled down, they went back to claim the land that they owned. And the problem is that deed of trust that they had to go to the court system, and it took many years for them to argue it out. But essentially, at the end, I mean, it was a great outcome for them. They were able to get back all their land, and they actually sell their land in piecemeal to developers to build up the city now.
oh
So it's
wow,
really cool. Yeah.
worked out
So
for them.
I'm very happy. I mean, they really hold dear to my heart because I talk to them almost like on a monthly basis. I'm like, how are you guys doing all the time? They run a successful legal practice here
Oh,
in
wow.
California now. Yeah,
That's cool.
so it's pretty neat. But again, it's just like if you don't really truly own something unless you can have like immense property rights over something. With Bitcoin, if someone wanted to take the value away from you, they would literally have to get your seed phrase from you, and the only way they can do that is like torture you, putting a gun to your head.
Oh,
But
yeah.
they can't go to the court system and say, hey, look, get a judgment and you have to pay me, and I can start like taking stuff out of your checking account with the bank. You can't do
Yep.
that with Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's true ownership. And it's basically a savings account that's true ownership. And the more people that realize, because there's a lot of people right now that could still buy one Bitcoin, they either have the money or they can move it around. It's still at a range where someone could kind of pull that off. But I think it'll get out of the range where you can't. And then you're just looking at point 0.1 Bitcoin or whatever it is. And because I think if you divided it evenly between all 8 billion people, it'd be like 0.002 or something Bitcoin per person or something
yeah,
like
I
that.
think it's like 2,000 satoshis or 200
Yeah, so it's
satoshis,
like
something like
super,
that.
it's pretty small. And then, I mean, MicroStrategy is not selling anytime soon. There's 158,000 off the market. And, so that's where I think the Bitcoin ETF will be different than the gold ETF is because the, the Bitcoin can be taken off the market by 8 billion different people. And that's not the case with gold because
So
the
we
guy,
saw, yeah.
oh,
Oh, I was gonna say we saw GBTC get approved, right? And that's been currently traded, but it didn't really have the trading volume that a lot of retail investors into Bitcoin really thought it would have.
yeah,
So this new Bitcoin ETF that's getting approved, sort of my question is, I wonder if a lot of institutional and retail investors will actually buy into this. Will we see significant trading volume, which could potentially push up the price of Bitcoin? I just wanted to know your thoughts there. Do you think this Bitcoin ETF will have a huge material impact?
well, I think that the ETF will have to have Bitcoin, right? It'll have to be backed by Bitcoin, whether they have it already now or they'll buy it in the future. And that I know like the Bitcoin HODL guy is talking about how, and I've heard, I think Matthew Kratter, Bitcoin University talked about is that BlackRock makes its money off its management fees. It makes one fee off the money that, like a, monthly fee or whatever for managing. And then it makes it basically a commissions off the gains that they get. So, that's how BlackRock makes its money. It's not quite the big bad evil guy that everyone thinks it is on some level because they just have all this money and it's actually other people's money. And where are you going to park 10 or 12 trillion dollars? You're just going to buy a lot of different stuff and be diversified. I mean, that was the whole Vanguard, the founder of Vanguard strategy. It was just diversify because things are going to go up and some are going to go up a lot and some are not going to do good. So if you buy everything, you're going to get the winners, and basically the winners like Tesla or whatever like that are what carry the overall market. So got Ford going sideways for 20 years and then you know Tesla going up like a rocket. So I don't
It's
know. I
really
mean, I
insane.
don't know enough about all the ETFs, but I just know that the one difference is that someone in Korea that just wants to put $5 in can buy it. Someone in Afghanistan that somehow is able to get Binance or whatever can buy $10 with it, or maybe they can go to one of those money exchange places and now they can have 10, 15, $20 of Bitcoin. And so they can't, like that guy in Afghanistan is not going to be able to buy $20 of gold. I mean, I don't know, he might be able to buy some trinket, but it's not the same. And so I think that will have an effect. And like now, I mean, more people are going to be buying when Bitcoin's 100,000 than are right now at 35. And it feels like it's more a self-fulfilling prophecy. And the bigger market cap it gets, the stronger it is. And then the hash rate keeps growing. It's just more of a secure network.
It's crazy just how international, Bitcoin is. I mean, we have such a what I'd say Western view of like, our bank system's great, our US dollar's strong, we don't have to worry about getting a checking account. If you go to other countries, it's very hard to establish a banking account. It's really difficult. But
Strong property rights.
yeah, definitely. So just going back to the Bitcoin ETF, like just one more thing. If Here's a thought experiment. If you had $100 to invest into Bitcoin ETF or just $100 into just pure Bitcoin, which one would you choose?
Bitcoin, I think, just because that do you have it yourself? I mean, I think that it's good. Maybe some people it's easier for them to get exposure. They already have a Fidelity account. They already have some kind of Fidelity account, and they can just buy the ETF, and that's easy. And it's a little bit bigger of a step to do addresses and sending money and have your own your own wallet set up. It's not really that hard, but you got to make sure you have those words down, written in a couple different locations, no digital copies. Even though I guess Tangem does have a wallet where you don't have the seed phrase. I'm a
Yeah.
big believer of the seed phrase personally, but I personally think that I would just try to hold it on to myself because you have it. Because if something goes sideways with the Bitcoin ETF, which I don't think it would, but it's just nice to have the Bitcoin yourself. It's like a peace of mind a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's the most powerful part about it. I mean, with the Bitcoin ETF, you really don't know if, they're going to own the asset outright. And if they do, you don't know what they're going to do with it.
You're just
We like to
basically
believe,
owning an IOU kind of, but they don't really, you can't redeem it, I don't think, for Bitcoin. So you're just owning paper Bitcoin. And, you're trusting BlackRock to make sure, or whoever, to make sure that they actually have Bitcoin in their, in their wherever they're holding it, So I think it'll have a net positive effect, and I think it'll kind of be timed, and there'll be the halving, and then at some point they're going to turn the money printer back on, and it could be the perfect storm.
at what point in time do you think Bitcoin will actually be a mainstream conversation where people are actually receptive to the idea of like, hey, I really want to own Bitcoin or I want to be paid in Bitcoin?
Maybe, yeah, like more people adopting it, and probably maybe once it gets when maybe the fluctuation at some point the fluctuations won't be so great. So if it's like a 10 or 12 trillion dollar market cap, maybe then it's not swinging so much. So people don't see like, oh yeah, that was, yeah, it was up to 69,000, but now it's down, to 15 or whatever, now it's 35. So maybe once the price fluctuations, but I think some people might be forced just to move into it just because Jim Rohn is a guy that was like kind of a motivational speaker, and he said he's got a good clip that he's like, "Oh, you think it's risky to invest? Oh, you think that's risky?" He's like, "Well, wait till you get the bill in life when you don't invest." So I think people will be kind of forced to take more of a look, and then the more people that are into it. So like I have some family members, I've told them about it. Well, and they're not getting on board. But what happens when someone else tells them? Now they're like getting hit from a couple different sides. So, and that's where I think that for Bitcoin to work, it needed to be organic. And because Bill Gates in 2010, because or 11, could have just bought the whole supply, and then he owns the whole supply, and it never grew. So it's just, I think every wave, just a few more people come in, and some people are just going to come in and they might get burnt, but they're kind of in the game. They got their Coinbase account set up, or they're set up with Binance, or they kind of figured out their own wallet, or whatever. Now they'll probably be the Bitcoin ETF. So every wave, it seems like more people will be coming in. I barely just kind of tapped. The 2017, 2018, I just dipped my toe in it. Put a couple $100, made $400 or $500. Just dipped my toe in, and then I was kind of paying attention to it for the next one. And then now I'm like more serious about this third bull run basically that I'm kind of a part of. And the best thing I could have did was just buy a bunch and hang on to it back when it was 2,500.
I mean, we all wish we held,
Yep.
more Bitcoin back then.
But
But again,
if it
part of the
goes where
journey
some
is
people
learning
think,
it.
yeah, yep. And if it goes where people think it can, and if it is something for national security or cybersecurity, and all of a sudden governments, businesses, people hold it, there's just not enough Bitcoin. There's only one place for the price to go. Eventually it'll stabilize, but to me it feels like we're not there. There's just 95% of the people aren't really in the Bitcoin space. So what happens when that's 75%, instead of 5%?
So what's actually, I just want to share with you just how crazy I am all in into this.
Uh-huh.
So I had a 401k, and with a 401k converted to IRA, you can't really
Yeah.
invest much into it except equities. I mean, you probably go
Yep.
with Fidelity or some sort of stock
Mm-hmm.
brokerage company. But the thing was, I was like, I'm all in on Bitcoin. So I actually had to convert my IRA to a self-directed IRA,
Okay.
and I bought all Bitcoin with essentially my 401k. So I went
Oh,
full in
okay.
on
With like
this.
I Trust
I
Capital or Unchained or something, or
No, it was through Madison
oh,
Trust.
okay.
Yeah, and I own a fair amount of real estate, but I've actually sold. I'm on the process. I've ever sold most of it, and I'm selling a few more properties off just to go full in on Bitcoin. I mean, I have come down with my investment thesis of like this is going to be the next game changing industry that a lot of people just are sleeping on right now.
And it's just getting bigger and stronger every day, it seems like.
Yeah. So the thing about Bitcoin, it's very volatile. I mean, the price goes
Hmm.
up, price goes down. But I think with any new emerging industry or emerging tech, you're going to see this. It's just natural. It happens.
Oh
It's
yeah,
out in the
Amazon
open.
swung a lot more in the beginning.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone thought
Oh,
Amazon
yeah.
was going to work out. Tesla as well. I mean,
Oh
how
yeah.
many times did it go up and down? I mean,
Oh yeah, a
to the
lot. I
credit, they
mean,
got an amazing car.
oh yeah, yep, yeah, yeah. Tesla's awesome. I'm signed up for the
Yeah,
Cybertruck, so
I am too, actually.
yeah.
So I actually saw the Cybertruck actually driving around on our freeway, and
Oh
it's
nice.
actually like a beast of a car. If you look at it, it looks a lot longer than I would say the Model X.
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah.
yeah, it's
Um,
pretty cool.
got
I
my
gotta
place in
say,
line. I'm waiting.
yeah. So okay, actually talking about Tesla, what's pretty interesting is that a lot of companies that have like an ESG sort of program, they
Uh-huh.
actually have carbon credits. And from what I actually heard from Jarrett Carpenter, who runs More Than Blockchain, he was telling me that a lot of companies they have a difficult time trading carbon credits, so they're trying to figure out ways to invest in it.
Mm.
So what a lot of companies are doing is trying to invest in Bitcoin mining farms with that.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how larger entities, publicly traded companies,
Yeah.
utilize their carbon credits going forward. But that's
Yeah.
just something fun I want
Yeah,
to
no,
share with
that
you.
yeah, that's a cool thing. I know that carbon credits are probably gonna be a big business and are big business. Yep. Yeah, it's interesting times. I'm excited and you just gotta be patient. Just stack sats and be patient and basically if you can figure out a way to make more money and buy more sats is
So we have the Bitcoin halving coming up. The floated date right now, I think, is March or April of next
Mhm.
year. I think they're. I think everyone's trying to get the halving date to be on 420.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know if you knew that, but I think that's what the miners are trying to do. So you typically after every halving event, you see price appreciation. It's sort of
Mhm.
lagging. It doesn't happen immediately, but
Yeah.
I wanted to get your thoughts on, what do you think Bitcoin will hit next year by the end of, 2024? And what do you think it'll
Hmm.
be during this next cycle, which is roughly 4 years? What do you think that number could be?
I think that it's possible that maybe it hits new all-time highs next year, and then I feel like maybe like 130 to 150 is something that it could do. I think that that's pretty like kind of conservative, but kind of realistic. And I think it could go 250 maybe too. Um, but it feels like 130 to 150 is something that's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. I think right
Yeah.
now Bitcoin sits about 1.6 trillion as a market cap. And I've heard a lot of different thought experiments where people try to compare this to, say, the real estate market
Hmm.
or even bonds, treasuries. And they'll say it's possible to be a $200 trillion market. A lot of it's copium, of course,
Oh
but
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really interesting to see a lot of these price predictions.
Yep, you just got to be patient. I think stack sats and then whatever your game plan is, it looks different for everyone. Some people are going all in, partial, this, that. Some people might try to peel profit off. Some people are going to just try to keep stacking. But I do think that it's going to go up and it should, I think, I mean, a 140, 150 is like over a 2x from its all time high. So that's kind of, if you keep it kind of a little bit more tame and then you're kind of happy, if you're thinking it's going to be 250 to 500 or 650, I mean, if it got to gold's market cap, then it would be like 600,000 or 650. But if you're also just trying to look at your Bitcoin as a savings account, then you're just trying to get as much Bitcoin as you can while you can.
I think, there's a lot of people who are sort of faced between deciding to invest between, you say, Apple or Tesla
Uh
versus,
huh.
say, Bitcoin. And what I tell a lot of people is like, Apple's a pretty large company, but they can only incrementally increase the prices on their products, which in return
Oh
increases
yeah.
their share value by only so much. Apple would, have to make an entirely new phone, like a new product that has the same,
Oh yeah. Their
market cap
headset or
as just the
something.
phone
Yeah.
itself. Yeah. And it's very hard to, do a 2x, 3x, or 4x with Apple currently.
Oh yeah. I think that yeah, it's hard for them to do a 5x or something from here. Or Bitcoin, I think, and it's just different because it's money, computer network, bit power. If Jason Lowery's thesis is correct, so I think that yeah, I think that uh, it's just different. It's a different animal, and it's Apple. Is a product basically, and it's not money and a computer network. So they're just different.